Hello, kind people. This is Dmitry. Welcome to my weekly listener recap. Today we're talking about this puzzle. It's called Figures of Fun, and it is by Serpent. Now, Serpent is a pseudonym of Jason Crampton, and I think I reviewed some of Jason's puzzles here. Maybe not the listener ones, but the Magpie ones. Jason used to be a professor in the university where I did my PhD at Royal Holloway. We used to share the same building. He was in the maths department, whereas I was in computer science. And at the time, I saw him on campus many times, but at the time I had no idea he was a setter. And even if I knew, that would not say much to me, because I don't think, maybe I had just started to solve daily puzzles, but certainly I had no idea about any of the thematics. And years later, when I started doing the listener and then the Magpie, and Jason being at the time one of the editors of the Magpie, I then stumbled upon the news item on the university website that said something along the lines of, Professor Jason Crampton retires but continues to ask difficult questions. And that was basically him retiring from the university to concentrate full-time on his career as a crossword compiler, and sort of in his retirement. And since then he was lured back to full-time employment by The Times, and he's now the crossword editor for The Times. A few videos back I mentioned that Colin Thomas' twin is an assistant crossword editor at The Times, so Jason is the boss. Okay, so let's have a look at this puzzle. And Jason's puzzles are, for me, sort of very, like classicists, not in the sense of being about Latin or ancient Greek, but in a sense of being kind of very correct and very elegant and very sort of principled, often without like any extravagant fireworks there, but always very solid, and often uncovering some themes that I had no idea existed. Probably my favorite and my most memorable puzzle by Serpent is actually one of the Magpie A graders, probably one of my favorite A graders ever. So I recommend you dig it out if you can. I should have prepared better and find out which number of the Magpie it is, but it was on the subject of, and sort of massive spoiler alert here, so the grid was in the shape of slightly asymmetric. No, it was already symmetric, but then and then it stayed symmetric after the addition. But anyway, the grid represented Winchester Cathedral, and we had to shore it from the south by adding extra rows to the south of the grid, which corresponded to what diver William Walker did in the early 20th century, basically saving Winchester Cathedral, because it was built on peaty terrain, and there were problems with the foundations. Anyway, let's talk about this one. Let's read the preamble. Clues are given in normal order. The grid has 180-degree symmetry, but bars needn't be shown. 5 entries are unclued, 2 of which identify the theme. The others contain thematic material. 29 clues need a word removed to enable solving. The first letters of these words should help to identify the theme. Solvers must use lowercase letters where appropriate in include entries, and must highlight the thematic material. Now, I guess the usual stuff when, and I'm repeating this every time, but I think it probably warrants some repetition, is that whenever you see a carte blanche, what you need to do is to look at the lengths of the crosses. So here the clues are not split into crosses and downs. I don't quite know why, because it's still reasonably easy to deduce which one is which, but basically, as you can see here, there is a certain symmetry in the lengths, and that allows us to split them in half and split the crosses and downs. What we also notice is that we know there are some unclued entries, but nothing breaks this symmetry, and so you might make a guess out of it with some confidence that the unclued entries are also symmetrically placed. Okay, and then what you do is you try to solve some clues and try to place them somewhere. One thing you do notice is that clearly there might be some of the, like, it wouldn't surprise me like if the whole row is unclued and is like one single entry, and thus like two, say, rows are completely missed from this list, because if you start counting these letters, it turns out that there's a lot of flexibility. So anyway, I think then I sort of at some point solved this, which is diva upset, and looks like this doesn't even have any extra things to remove. And then I solved the first one, which is vote in. So it's 2, which goes back on board vessel. Vein is a vessel. And so step seems to be an extra word. And we realized that immediately, if we put 1 across anywhere sort of here, or even if we try to shift it, it doesn't have any intersection with avid. But if we instead make this assumption that the whole row 1 is excluded and shift it down, and shift it down like this, that didn't work quite well, but you know what I mean. Then, and if we put avid here, that suddenly becomes promising. And then I think fairly soon I'm just trying to remember what I did next. Can't remember even. No, I don't remember. But anyway, I mean, things started to kind of fall in place, and let me check. Maybe I actually do have some snippets. So I solved it on paper, but and recreated it then here. But maybe I have some snippets of my intermediate process. Let me check. Yeah, I checked, and indeed, I think the next clue I solved was this, which is just an anagram of notes, and so shredded is an extra word, and it nicely fits here. And then I think I got this, which is this, civil engineer. I can't even remember how this works, but maybe, so this is railway, and maybe this is just limit, and is uncovered an extra word? Yeah, uncovered is just an extra word, and that gives us this, and so on. And it wasn't really a hard grid fill. And then we move to the end game. And for the end game, we absolutely need to read the hidden message. And the message goes, Sins mignon sur quatre notes. And this immediately brings you to the following work by Schumann called Carnival. And the crucial part here is this, that the 21 pieces are connected by a recurring motif. The 4 notes are encoded puzzles, and Schumann predicted that deciphering my masked ball would be a real game for you. And then basically these are the musical cryptograms, so A, E flat, C, B, which in German is written like this, and then this, and then this. And so if we now go back to the grid, we realize that and it actually was a little bit of a problem for me, because what I didn't realize is that like this are the entries. It was rather hard for me to kind of, I was expecting the symmetry. So what I didn't understand was that the thematic material occupies only part of like these 2 entries. So this is the entry and this is the entry, and they contain thematic material, so the preamble wording is absolutely fine, but my understanding of it was not. And as you can see, so you need to use lowercase in S, and you need to highlight these 3 cryptograms, and those indeed are 14 cells. And this is what you submit. So, you know, a nice and elegant puzzle. I guess in terms of cryptic messages by the composers, it doesn't quite reach the height of the one by Panzerculator last year on the Dorabella cipher by Elgar. But that sort of stepped outside of the world of music, I guess. Whereas this, I guess, stays in it, if it makes any sense. I'm not sure I fully understand the title, but I guess someone in the comments will enlighten me. And by the time this is printed, or by the time this is released, then of course there will be notes released and they will make it clear. But anyway, very nice puzzle. Thanks, Jason. And I really hope that with all this editorial work, we are still going to get many more Serpent puzzles. Thank you for watching, and let's see what next week brings. Bye.